The war with Iran continues fraying relations between the U.S. and our longtime NATO allies, with NATO's Secretary General set to visit the White House tomorrow. Today, the United Kingdom is hosting a virtual military meeting to discuss the Strait of Hormuz. Participants reportedly include the UK, France, Germany, Canada, Japan, the UAE, but not Israel nor the United States. Britain's prime minister has said efforts to guarantee safe passage through the strait would begin only when fighting has stopped. So NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte comes to D.C. amid more headlines like this one from The Economist, which details what could happen to Europe if the U.S. abandons the alliance it helped create in the wake of World War II. Senior congressional correspondent Joe Khalil live for us there in Washington. So, Joe, the president's criticism of NATO has only increased since this war began.
Yeah, it has, and that's why it appears like the NATO General Secretary, Mark Rutte's visit to the White House tomorrow is an attempt to try to repair some of the damage that has clearly been done to the U.S.-NATO relationship. President Trump has not been shy. He has been very public, along with several other members of the administration, about their frustrations, how they perceive NATO not just not helping in the U.S.'s war effort in Iran, but clearly, in some cases, they see it even as a hindrance to the U.S. Not moving forward with the war. And clearly, President Trump says he expected more from NATO allies, and he has made several comments. He elaborated yesterday on his frustrations. This is, in part, what he said from the White House podium.
We went to NATO. I didn't ask very strongly. I just said, hey, if you want to help, great. No, we will not help. I said, that's all right. You don't want to help? Because I've always said NATO's a paper tiger. See, NATO is a paper tiger. Putin's not afraid of NATO. Putin's afraid of us, very afraid of us. And he's explained it to me a lot of times. I got to know him very well. I know him very well.
So there are some layers to this. Both President Trump and Secretary Rubio have expressed frustration, particularly with NATO European allies unwilling to help the United States militarily open up the Strait of Hormuz. They have also been frustrated because several countries have refused to allow the United States aircraft to use their military bases in Europe, which has in and of itself been a frustration. But several European leaders from NATO have made clear they've been adamant they would honor their NATO commitments, which is that if the United States or any NATO member were to be attacked, they would come to the U.S.'s defense. What several of them have said, however, is that that hasn't happened in this case. The U.S. was not attacked. It was sort of the other way around. The U.S. objectively started the war with Iran, and therefore these European countries and allies don't feel obligated to step in. Many of them actually, again, doing the opposite. Some are already on the record as mulling the possibility of a future NATO in which the United States is not really an active part. This is the Spanish foreign minister saying here, quote, NATO is a mutually beneficial alliance for Europeans and Americans, but the U.S. administration's remarks and new positions on Euro-Atlantic security are inviting us Europeans to take a leap in terms of our own sovereignty and defense matters. So as we look ahead, Nichole, to tomorrow's meeting, we're also going to be keeping an eye on whether other European leaders, other NATO leaders make any comments, specifically French President Macron, German Chancellor Merz, and also several others. The UK Prime Minister Starmer would be another one, watching to see if there are any comments from them ahead of Mark Rutte coming to the United States and meeting with President Trump, Rubio, and potentially also War Secretary Hegseth as well.
All right. Joe Khalil live for us there in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.